let's share here about, okay, what we at EBANX, we have been doing over the last 12 years of our history, processing cards payments in Latin America. I love when I can say, yeah, we basically work in racing markets, which are challenging markets. So we abstract all the complexities and we aim to simplify everything for you so you have the best experience. So I brought here a few of the best practice or important topics when it comes to performance in cards payments. Number one, we start talking about deep connection with the local ecosystem. Super important. We are talking here about the rails. So having the right acquirers in place in the different countries, everything which makes sense. Also the issuer relationship. Today we are connected through more than 30 direct acquirers across the globe. We have relationship with nearly 50 issuers. That makes totally difference because we can sit in the same table and discuss approval rate for our merchants on a mid-level and create together strategies to improve performance on those. I think one thing to comment here is smart routing is key for these rails. Retry mechanisms as well, because you can recover transactions that are potentially declining one acquire but approve it on the second one. But there is a third key word to get from this slide, which is redundancy. I would say strategic redundancy, because remember when I showed the LATAM map in the beginning, I was showing the context and I mentioned that sometimes the payments ecosystem, they have different maturity levels in different countries. Sometimes that is a reality within the same country. So this is super important to have multiple connections in order to have a redundancy at the feature level for 3DS, network token, and etc. Second point, having the rails in place, we are talking about the card capabilities, the card features. So how important is to know exactly what makes sense for each country. Of course, one common mistake potentially could be a global brand that understand, okay, and sell in this region and the people pay using this protocol. And that will be the same behavior I will see in LATAM. Not exactly that case. So it's super important to understand the adoption of the different features. We are talking about, for example, network token or 3DS, card on file, installments, how installments behave on each market, card verified, and etc.
Seb, let me just make a comment here.
Please.
3GS, please. I need your help on this one here, guys, because we have seen that most of the merchants, they do only send us a 3DS transaction when they're sure that this is a fraud, and then they send it to me. What happens here is that this is going to update my model and it's going to make an adverse selection. So every time that you guys send me, it's a fraud, and then my model is going to understand this is a fraud, so it's going to be more restricted every time. So please, let's talk about this. Let's work together on this. And if you're sure it's a fraud, don't send me, and let's start to find a way, okay? Because my model is going to keep denying it, so it's not going to work. Not going to work for you, not going to work for me, okay?
Amazing, thank you, Anderson. And yeah, this is super important to see, work together. It doesn't need to keep with just one side of the view. So working together, I think, is the key. And the other highlight I will mention from here, it's super important for us when we develop products and solutions for you, is to consider all the flavors that we can have regarding this feature. So we understand some of you potentially, let's say 3DS, as Anderson was mentioning. Some of you might be already connected through an API authenticator, so you just need EBANX to send authenticated data on the authorization. Other merchants could potentially need EBANX to do the authentication step that could be with challenge to the customer in order to get the liability shift or a frictionless using data only. So there are a lot of different variables, and we work very closely in order to attend all the merchant use cases. Number 3, being up to date to the latest technology, somehow related to the previous one. We are bringing here a network token because this is something that we have been investing a lot over the last month. Network token from the card schemes in order to increase the security of the transaction flow. We have seen good results, especially not necessarily directly impacting approval rates, but apart from that, we can see the health of the affiliations, how they improve whenever the transaction is sending with a network token. We saw this is an extract data from our database, we saw a huge reduction on security-related declines and also on the restricted cards. So again, super important to understand what is going on in cards industry across the globe and then adapt and localize to the different markets in Latin America. Number 4, there are 6. Number 4, understanding consumer behavior. I will add something. I think it's understanding local customer behavior, because any brand to succeed in anywhere they do payments, they need to understand the customer, yes, but they also need to understand that each customer in different countries might behave differently. This is super important. We are talking about also understanding the fraudster behavior, because if you want to attack and prevent fraud and prevent chargeback, you need to really deep understand. We have at EBANX developed a tool, a very robust tool using AI, where we basically can analyze tons of variables from the customer, define the scoring, and together align it with another tool we have in place, which we call X-Router. We make sure that the fraud level on each of single affiliation from our merchant is healthy, because that has a direct impact on approval rates. We brought a case here with a specific merchant. We worked really closely on doing smart routing and a few tweaks, and great results. In 5 months, we could get a little more than 7% in uplift of approval rates. Number 5, analyze decline codes and understand very well what you could do whenever a transaction is declining. First of all, we see that some transactions are declining and they are retriable. You could try again, but others are non-retriable. So first of all, this understanding is super important. We also facilitate that. We provide ISO codes, MAC codes, message to the merchants in our API response. Even the non-retriable, you could attack those, because going back to the card features I mentioned, and just one example, potentially you use the card verify feature before to actually know if the card is valid or not, before you send authorization to the acquirer, and avoid a decline because of a problem of the card. And then we are talking about the group of the retriable transactions. And this is very important, not just to know what to retry, but how to retry and when. So let's, for example, insufficient funds. Yes, if you check in your data on a monthly basis, you will see on the different days, different share of insufficient funds. So the retry should not be like randomly or fixed set in D+2, D+5 or whatever. If you compare the numbers, you will see different markets potentially with higher insufficient funds declines, potentially in LATAM by the end of the month. Here in Latin America, we are used to pay once a month, usually at the beginning of each month. So these important details also matters when you are analyzing how to deal with any transactions to be declined. Also the time zone, it's also important. You need to consider, if you process in Latin America, you will have different time zones. So avoid sending huge number of transactions retry on late hours, for example. That could potentially impact also how the issuers are looking at those transactions. Right, and number 6, trusted MID. For sure, this is super powerful. This is basically a strategy or an agreement we do EBANX with the issuers, of course with partnership with the merchants, where we create a channel, specific affiliations. We align exactly what customers to send to those affiliations or what transactions. And on the issuer side, there will be a few flexibilization of rules, tending to have higher approval rates. We see an average of 5 percentile points of increase when we really implement in a good partnership the trusted MIDs. But we recently have a case in Brazil for a recurring subscription merchant where we could get 8%. So again, super important best practice here.